What's up, fellow gamers? Welcome to my Warmachine class guide here for Cyber Knight's Flashpoint. Now, unlike most of the classes in the game, where I've got to play them off and on for about the 800 hours I've played the game for, I've only played one campaign through with the Warmachine. Wanted to wait until I got the campaign done to record this, so sorry we're like a month and a half late off of the class coming out, but I wanted to give the class its paces. Hopefully you'll find this useful. I primarily play on high difficulties like Chrome and above. In fact, the save that these characters are on is one where I maxed out literally every difficulty slider I could have, except a little bit of early game difficulty, and managed to complete the game with some problems, but we got through in the end. You notice some of my war machines are dead. If you want to say that means I don't know what I'm doing, that's fine. Let's talk about the class though overall, and let's talk basically about what this class is about. Warmachine is first and foremost a melee combat class. It is the other melee combat class other than Cyber Sword. Now, they make good cross-class duo classes back and forth. There's going to be some stuff there, but if you're looking for a melee combatant, Warmachine is one of the two core melee combat classes. They're also extremely cyberware hungry. Now, what that means is, well, first of all, you need to put in cyberware to become the class itself, which is the Delta Wire here, but also you need to have claw implants to do almost anything in the middle tree. You need eye implants to do, I think, literally everything left-hand side tree, and you need a pulse generator to do almost everything in the right-hand side tree. There's like two exceptions in the entire class tree otherwise, which means to become a war machine from, like, say, being a soldier or a cyber sword, it's at least 2 trips to the doctor with downtime, with stress gain, with money spent. And so I find that multiclassing into Warmachine is a little difficult, and there's even some pretty meaningful opportunity costs there as well. But hiring a Warmachine, either in your starting crew or from the Underworld hub or anywhere else in the game, they tend to be pretty powerful combatants. In my case, my Warmachine ended up having the most kills of any of my characters in the campaign I just played, and so they really can be very strong, but they are incredibly high investment to get that reward. Let's start with the talents, though. We'll begin with the stuff that's very much at the very beginning that you can kind of get at the start of everything. And first up is Berserk Haze. So when you kill someone with a cyber weapon, you get 1 turn back on all your cybernetic talents. This can be pulse generators, this can be claws, this can be eye lasers. Anything with an actual cooldown, you'll cut 1 turn off of it. The nice thing is you can get 3 charges of this and then drop Berserk Haze down to a 3rd turn cooldown. So you can theoretically pop this turn 1, 2, 3, and 4 back to back to back to back. And then also, if you want to spend even more investment, get an extra move point as well, back to back to back to back 4 turns in. Now, if you are really cyber weapon focused, getting +1, in some cases actually literally +1 charge, you can get your claws down to a 1 turn cooldown. That can be really beneficial. And considering that realistically, Warmachine is a claw focused class, this kind of says, when you kill with your claws, get 1 claw charge back. That is not a bad, like, talent to get. And at this point in time, you're like, well, I guess I'll just print a move point every turn for 4 turns. That's worth the 2 point at that point. Now, it is not the best talent in the class, but this talent is worth learning, and it's worth eventually, though not in the first couple of talents, investing heavily into. Next is Crimson Vector. Early on, Crimson Vector ends up being functionally an AP printer in that you're going to close a 6-meter gap maximally, which is better than you're going to run for 1 action point. You're also going to put a claw attack down, which out of the box costs 1 AP as well. So you get a little bit more with the 1 AP of movement and 1 AP of claw attacking for 1 action point. That's not bad overall. It's fine. It's there. It's a 5-turn cooldown. It is not like Slash Slide where you're getting multiple hits there. And so the maximum throughput here is just not that good. You cannot drop the AP cost down to 0 or anything. And so it's sort of maximally like a distance dropper. And spoilers, because you can bring your claw action point cost down to 0 and you can get a couple of sources of bonus move speed, Crimson Vector can occasionally be like, well, cover your movement point distance for 1 AP, which is nothing special at all, and do a claw attack, which is normally free. What means that, really it means that Crimson Vector is kind of like +1 charge to your claw attacks every 5 turns. Wait, I've seen that before. That's Berserk Haze. So I'm not going to say it's like a bad talent necessarily. I think it's totally fine, especially early on when you don't have -1 AP cost on your claw attacks. It's pretty reasonable here. And if you want to invest, you can in fact make this a 9, then 12, then 15 meter dash. That will absolutely save you action points down the line. Now that said, I don't find Warmachine to be too action point hungry, and in fact there are better ways to print action points, but eventually as you invest deeply into Warmachine, the value of high investment here can arrive, but early on to take the 1-pointer, feel pretty good about it. Maybe take the 9-meter node just because you might find you want it, but probably not, and kind of leave it be. Next is Stun Strike. This one, of course, does require having an eye laser, much like Crimson Vector requires having a claw. Stun Strike is a simple point-and-click stun. Now, you need line of sight, so you can't go through a wall. Smoke screens can mess you up. If the cover's too high, that can mess you up as well. But the nice thing about being a Warmachine is you're frequently in melee range, and so it's very easy to create the line of sight that you need. In the campaign, I just play Warmachines in basically every single mission. I have never had a significant problem with Stun Strike's line of sight requirement. In fact, the 15-meter range, though it's, I would say, short to mid-range for a Knight's Flashpoint talent, 50 meters is good enough where I frequently don't feel too concerned here either. It is just inside of guard division range, but like, that's fine. They were going to turn alert by you stunning them anyway. Does it really matter that they got to see you before you stunned them? Not really. So I think it's not a huge deal overall. Also worth noting that stunning already kills Overwatch, so don't worry too much about the other sort of benefits here. And I find that just out of the box, 5-turn cooldown, 2 action point cost, it's good enough to like cross the bar. It's like, yep, this is a good enough talent that I'm going to use, I'm going to learn, and I'm going to feel okay about having a Warmachine here, and that's going to be fine. I'm going to feel good about having the talent learned. Now you can drop the cooldown some. You can increase the range to 20 and then eventually 30 meters. Again, I don't think you really need that for that investment. Down at the bottom, you can drop the enemy evasion by 10% for the single turn. You can do it by 20% for the single turn. I don't think this is really worth the investment personally, but if you're already using Stun Strike once every 4 turns maximally, 20 hit chance on that target is okay. I wouldn't really recommend it. You could drop the action point cost down to 1. This might be worth it, but it's a +3 to get there. Cooldown to 4, -1 AP, and then like for fun some evasion. Again, I'm not going to say it's a bad option. There just are better Warmachine talents, but if you find yourself going into here and grabbing the +3 on Stun Strike and being like, well, you know what? I'm going to use it to help other people as well. I'm going to grab another +2 and make it really easy to hit somebody. It's fine. But again, I would not rush for this. So let's keep talking about the optical laser tree. Every single one of these, again, requires eye lasers here. Laser Master, to me, I think is not a particularly strong talent overall. It improves the talent granted by your cybernetic optical lasers, and it gives you +1 charge of the actives. Now, the untalented optical laser actives, I find, are pretty bad overall. If they didn't even require having an implant and they were like talents on my character's skill bars, I would still like kind of rarely use them. And so investing in more charges than I would rarely use, to me, is like not really worth it. You can make the eye lasers do more damage, but eye lasers do really pitiful damage in almost all contexts. These are almost dead nodes. You can get extra charge. You can make them more accurate, which to me is actually even worse than the plus damage nodes here, personally. And then you can make them deal less damage to you. Now, right now, when I'm recording, which is late August of 2025, eye lasers currently do not damage the user. I understand that's the intent. That said, eye lasers are not very strong, and even if they didn't damage me, I don't think they're all that good. I really do not think these 4 nodes are really good at all. What eye lasers really do, and this is, to be fair, their actual design intent, written by like their initial doc when they like announced the class, as well as the news post when they put the class out in July, was like, lasers are there as utility, and then they have a bunch of damage nodes that like don't do anything. Eye lasers, by the way, can't miss. They're guaranteed glancing, so you will always get the debuff on them. They all get some kind of debuff, either well, they're either special because they like preempt Overwatch, or they lower evasion or accuracy or crit vulnerability. That's fine. I think you wouldn't want to spend 2 action points on that. And so realistically, I just don't see the point in grabbing these nodes here. To me, this is a pretty much, maybe grab the +1 max charge from the innate talent, but otherwise, I would skip this one. Otherwise, I would just kind of move on. Next to Overheat, and I think Overheat is actually pretty sweet overall. The nice thing is the layout is pretty solid here as well. So 2 action point, 5-turn cooldown. Now, I don't know if it's a tooltip bug or a gameplay bug, but the way the game works right now, and again, late August 2025, is Overheat, out of the box, is a permanent disable of a camera or motion detector. For a proc spawn, of course, it blows up. It's going to make noise. That can make guards angry and investigate the sound. Be careful about that one. But it is a 2 action point permanent disable of a camera or motion detector. That's pretty good. 50 meters is fine. That's usable. That is longer than a basic camera can see, so that's pretty chill. For motion detectors, it's a usable enough radius. You're going to be fine here overall. If you grab this node, though, it suddenly makes it a 1-turn long disable. Never, ever, ever, holy crap, never learn this node. It is terrible. Now, in terms of the actual power of this node itself, the fact that it can only target 3 specific types of devices, the fact that it can cost 2 action points out of the box, if it's not permanent, it is the worst jam kit in the game by an incredibly large margin. If it is permanent, it's worth the 2 action point cost, and I'd be willing to grab the 20 meter range in order to get a second charge, and I'd be willing to grab the 25 meter range in order to drop the action point cost down to 1, because I will cast this every single time it's available with 2 charges on a 4-turn cooldown. I am cool with that. I am down. Do not learn this node. It is honestly pretty sweet overall. Permanent camera kill is great. Permanent motion detector kill, pretty great overall. It is a really solid utility talent. Next solid utility talent here is Ash Protocol. It is very, very similar to the exactly named Dissolve from Scourge. Now, before you're like, oh, I'm going to multi-class in Warmachine to be a really good, support character, keep in mind, you have to multi-class in Warmachine by putting in the Spine and then also putting in eye lasers to grab just Ash Protocol and Overheat. That's all. Well, I guess Sunstrike's actually pretty good as well. Just maybe it makes the cut to grab these 3 nodes and feel good about multi-classing Warmachine for a bit of utility. I think there's better multi-class opportunities, but maybe. Regardless, Ash Protocol is basically point-and-click Dissolve. It is all the same mechanics of Dissolve. The upside being that it's a nice 8-meter distance, which is better than Dissolve out of the box. You can drop the cooldown to 4, you can drop the action point cost down to 1, but you cannot get the second and third charge like Dissolve has, which is a little bit tough, but you can also increase the range substantially up to 20 to make it really, really easy. That said, again, you can only Ash Protocol a single corpse before you go on a 4-turn cooldown. I wouldn't say it's generally worth going +3 just to drop the cooldown from 6 to 4 and then get the AP cost down by 1. Maybe it does, but as a 1-pointer going through an okay-ish travel node, or maybe up here through these travel nodes, maybe you consider it, but yeah. Not the most exciting, but it definitely works as a 1-pointer. I just would not invest too heavily in it otherwise. Final talent point here in the Eye Laser tree is Nova Beam, and I think Nova Beam is really, really a very weak talent. Brought it in a couple missions and was entirely unimpressed, so by the time you're here getting Nova Beam, you've had to pass through a lot of the other, rest of the tree, so you're not getting this at, level 2, level 3, level 4, whatever. You're not doing this against super early game enemies anymore. Not only because you would rather use things like Clawmaster and Redline, TBD, we'll talk about that later, but so the opportunity cost is already way too high, but the actual damage output here is pretty terrible. So it deals damage like a grenade, which means every enemy it hits, it will alert them, so you can't be stealthy. It's fine, but I'm just saying it's true that they will turn alert, unlike things like Shuriken Wave or Pulse Generators, where they will not turn and attack you. Other thing is it will damage your teammates. Now, the tough thing is this deals kinetic damage, which means if the enemies are heavily armored, you're going to do 1/4 of the damage. This is 2 action points and a bunch of travel to get here to deal 80 functional damage to a group of enemies. I don't care. It's not very good. You can increase the range a bit, you can increase the radius a bit to deal 80 damage to a few more enemies, but it's not very good. You can drop the cooldown to 4, no one cares, you should never press this button. You can increase the damage to around 375, so you can do around 100 damage to a squad of enemies. But the other difficulty here, if you're gonna really spend the +4 or +6 to get here, is it is direct line of sight to the ground, which turns out is really awkward. If you're going to slash sight some people, you can just kind of pick a spot that you could path to, and it's going to work out pretty well. If you're going to use Pulse Generators, just it's a circle around you, hit people, it's not a problem. If you're going to use Shuriken Wave, the circle around you, it's not going to be a big problem. You're going to attack someone, right? 2-meter distance, not a big problem. If you're going to throw a grenade, you can arc it, and it's going to land on the ground. It's not a big problem. Nova Beam requires you to have line of sight on the floor, which means if you're on a map with any kind of vertical geometry and you're in low ground, you literally can't use Nova Beam. You can't aim it against a wall or anything. You can't aim it against an enemy. You have to aim it against the ground, and some maps just don't let you do that in a lot of contexts. It's already, I think, not very strong. I would never learn this ability on any kind of high difficulty level where you actually face high level enemies. On lower difficulties, it might be fine. It's just some nice extra damage, and if you're flush with points, go ahead. But I really don't have a lot of respect for this talent. Talk about the middle tree. Crimson Vector we talked about already. Let's talk about Clawmaster, which to me is one of the 2 S-tier must-learn Warmachine talents. Clawmaster is one of the reasons Warmachine is a good talent. Now, I've already got it partially learned here on my Warmachine Sentry here. The baseline is +1 max charge. You can then drop the cooldown, By the way, base claw cooldown is 2, which makes the base claw cooldown now 1. That is a really big deal. This means you are generating twice as many claw charges per mission. Get a third charge is really, really useful. And the coup de grace here is your action point cost for cyber claw attacks is 0. This is incredible. It means that at the drop of a hat, you have 3 0 action point cyberclaw attacks. That is really, 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 really good. I think the worst cyberclaw in the game is 130 kinetic damage, but you can get things that do like 170 pure damage at the very top end, or 190-ish or so kinetic damage with really, really endgame kinetic claws. And that is a lot of damage. Now, if you want the bottom row, you can get up to 30% more damage with claws. My experience has been that I haven't needed to learn these, but they're certainly not bad. One thing to call out is there are a lot of talents, much like we saw with Berserk Haze, that says if you kill with a cybernetic talent, and so ensuring you actually get the last hit with your claws is important. It will trigger a lot of things that really, really matter. So by no means should you say, oh, I should always skip these nodes, but I found myself wanting to grab the other talents first, but I would almost certainly always come back here and grab this in a sort of later game build, and like, you know, beyond like level 16 or so. So very, very, very good. Again, basically for a total investment of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points plus 1 for travel, you go from having a 1 action point, 1 charge claw attack, that just isn't very good, to 0 action point, 3 charges, 1 turn cooldown, and it only costs you 5 points total. That is incredible. It is amazing. It is very, very, very good. And it is paired with the next best amazing S-tier talent, Warmachine. Every single Warmachine build that wants to be good, sorry, you have to learn these 2 talents. They are the best talents by far in the class. I think it is extremely not close. And so that is my very strong recommendation. Redline, off the bat, if you get a kill with a Cyberclaw, guess what? You gain 10% kinetic damage and 1 action point until the end of the next turn, which means I get 1 AP and bonus damage for this turn, which might mean I got a claw kill, and then now with my 1 AP I get to walk to somebody and get 2 more claw attacks. That's kind of nice. It might have triggered Redline, which means I have 3 claw attacks. That would be nice as well. But it also lasts until the next turn. So if I had to, take cover and to end my turn early, okay, well, next turn I've got 7 AP and 10% kinetic damage. And by the way, right, I probably triggered Berserk Haze and got a claw attack back. I have a 1 turn cooldown on my claws, so I have another claw attack back. Guess what? I'm going to be able to use Redline, and I'm going to get some claw attacks out. It's really, really good. And then it gets better. This is not the most exciting, but it's why I sort of lean toward playing very melee-heavy play styles, using a sword in one of the 2 equipment slots here, and playing for kinetic damage claws, because you can print some extra kinetic damage. It's not terribly exciting. Now keep in mind, because Redline lasts 2 turns, it actually also will not reactivate while Redline is on. So maximum Redline usage, where you're getting kills with a Cyberclaw every single turn, it will pop on turn 1. It will not pop on turn 2. It will not waste the charge to only get you 50% of duration. It will pop on turn 3, and then if you go up to here, it will have a 3rd charge, and it will pop on turn 5, and then on turn 6 it would have cooled down. Which means you can then pop it again on turn 7, which means for turns 1 through 8, with only a +2 here, you've got a permanent 1 action point and a permanent 20% extra kinetic damage. That's really good. That makes up for the fact that you can't install an MJack 2000 in your Warmachine, because that's taking up the hand slot that your claws are taking up. But the upside is, well, I couldn't install the cyber arms, but what I got was a permanent action point for the first 8 turns of the game. I'll take that. That's fine with me. Oh, sorry, we're not done. You go to +3? No, sorry, I printed twice the action points I mentioned. I'm printing 16 action points for a +3. Oh my, yeah, of course this is one of the best combat class in the game. Don't worry, we're not done. We're printing another point here. We're also going to print 8 movement points across the first 8 turns, and we're going to bump the kinetic damage for all the way up to 30% for those 8 turns where I'm getting Redline. Now, again, you are not absolutely guaranteed to last hit with your claws. It can get awkward, don't get me wrong, but because I'm going to cap out Redline and get 30% kinetic this way, and there's a couple of places where you can get kinetic as extra pure, like here, and strength 1% kinetic is pure as well. I tend to find myself playing kinetic focused as a playstyle, both on my sword and my claws here. But we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but it's why I tend to lean that way, because there's a lot of kinetic damage printing and kinetic damage affinity in the tree. So these are the 2 S-tier talents. I recommend you basically max them out as soon as possible. Making room for Berserk Haze is fine. Making room for Stun Strike is fine. Let's talk about the other 2 that you might make room for in the early game. Predator Reflex is pretty simple. It is Claw Overwatch. It has a baseline range of 6 meters, which means it will easily preempt any melee enemies. You can bump it to 11. You can bump it to a whopping 16 meters. Now, that is still not going to be longer than vision range. So if a guard is walking at you straight up and they're alert, they're going to shoot at you if they're staying at max range. Now, for a shotgunner, it's going to be okay. For someone with an assault rifle, it's not going to be close. But if you can get around a corner or whatever else, again, you can get value here. I generally don't find I super need the extra range, but if you really could, you can. If you really want to, you possibly can. Otherwise, you can get a second and a third charge. You can drop the cooldown down to 4. Again, I think you're in a really big rush to grab Clawmaster and Red Light as much as possible, but plus a couple on Predator Reflex to make sure you've got Overwatch for safety, I think is reasonable as well. We go into what I think I would consider the third strongest talent here in Warmachine. Out of the box, it's not that exciting, but Burn Surge is the kind of talent where every talent point multiplies against itself, and so that the sum of its parts, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So baseline, lose 20 health, but gain an AP every 5 turns. This is fine. Right, you can get the AP when you really, really need it. You can pop this 2 to 3 times in a mission often. It's fine. It's worth pathing a little bit toward, right? If you're already here at Predator Reflex, or you came up this way to, you know, go towards Red Line, it's like, it's not very far away. It's 1 point, you're over there. It's okay. Now, again, as of the recording here in late August, the health loss does not exist right now. It doesn't do anything. Though I expect they will fix that at some point, but yeah, right now it's not happening. But okay, what does investment do for you? Well, you can drop the cooldown to 3. Okay, so I can pop it every 3 turns instead of every 5. That's a meaningful improvement in usability. And I can get a second action point. Okay, so I almost, not quite, but almost doubled the uses. And then I also doubled the actual value of the talent itself. So I go from spending 1 to spending +4, and I've like really mathematically probably tripled the value of the talent. Okay, +4 for triple is fine here, sure. Let me go and talk about the rest of it. Okay, well, increasing the health loss by 20 kind of sucks. To me, it's not worth 3 initiative, although initiative buffs will always carry over to your next turn, and being a melee character, ensuring you go first on the next turn is really, really valuable. So there is some value here, but if the health loss is actually there, losing 20 health for that, probably not worth it for me, especially when I'm on a 3-turn cooldown. That's going to happen a lot to me. But I can gain another +1 move point and another +1 action point. What this means, I'm getting +3 AP, +1 move point. So I'm getting 4 action points on a 3-turn cooldown. Yeah, it's a +7 to do that, but I've quadrupled the AP gain and 50% increased the like usability rate roughly. And I was like, oh, okay, I've 6x'd the baseline burn surge here, and now I have like very clearly Warmachine go kill because I just have so much throughput available to myself that I can get a whole lot done. And yes, my AP cost for my claws is 0. Okay, fine. I don't always need as much AP as possible, but I do want to get in range, and I do want to swing my sword a couple of times to get them low because my claws aren't AP limited, they're charge limited. So I'm going to use AP on sword strikes or club strikes to allow my claws to get the finishing blow to trigger things like Red Line and Berserk Haze. I think Burn Surge is pretty sweet. I would generally max this 3rd, and at that point, I am an absolute killing machine, and my character is really, really strong. Let's talk about the final tree, though, in Pulse. We talked about Berserk Haze already. This one can work without a Pulse Generator. Don't worry about it. We go up to Pulse Gen Master. So Pulse Generators out of the box. One, the start of Warmachine, Sentry here, doesn't come with a Pulse Generator. And in fact, you can't even get one until you either complete some, like a power play, or upgrade. Oh, okay, there is an early game one, but there's not a combat Pulse Generator until you get either Cybernetics or Street Wetware to level 4. So you need several limit breaks on a Doctor in order to get access to any sort of offensive Pulse Generator. You can get a stealth one at Cybernetics 2, but you literally can't implant yourself with a Pulse Gen at the start of the game. There aren't any available for yourself. So, and again, it's going to take a while till you can get a combat one. Just want to kind of keep that in mind. Like, don't rush here too quickly because there are unlocks you'll need to do by playing the influence game and leveling your contacts. Regardless, though, you drop the recharge rate by 1 turn. Now, the other thing I'll say is that for the combat pulse generators, their base cooldowns are between 8 and 10 turns long. So dropping an 8-turn cooldown to a 7-turn cooldown is not nearly exciting as bringing, you know, a 2-turn cooldown claw to a 1-turn cooldown claw. So not exciting out of the box, not really at all. Now, pulse generators are the one talent where they actually do factually make you lose HP when using them. Now, the HP loss does not trigger stress or wounds. You will just simply have less HP, but as long as you don't get down, nothing changes, nothing matters. But still, especially if you're going to run a multi-stage mission where you're going to pulse gen 3 or 4 times across the entire mission itself. Okay, this is going to add up. You got to be a little bit careful. So, okay, not unreasonable to say that I want to, reduce the HP loss. It's pretty low investment. You can drop the cooldown by 2. You can drop the cooldown by 3. I skipped over for a second there. You can lower the AP cost as well. Most pulse generators cost 1. I believe there's 1 or 2 that cost 2. But dropping your average pulse generator to 0 action point cost, making them not lose you HP, drop the cooldown by 3 turns from 8 to 5. And keep in mind, right, we had Berserk Haze over here that says also lower it by more. And if I invest more heavily, I have 3 charges of this to lower it by, 2 more turns. Like, okay, I can get to a state here where I invest pretty heavily in Pulse Gen, I invest kind of heavily in Berserk Haze, and actually, I will reliably get 2 Pulse Gens in a map. Now, the debuff quality of Pulse Generators, to me, is still lower than, like, the best combat talents in the game. Like, I would rather have Strike Zone than every Pulse Generator in the game. And that's, like, on a per cast basis, not even counting the cooldown. Okay, it's close, I guess. No, Strike Zone costs 0 AP, and also, doesn't cost money in downtime. It also has, like, 17 times the actual area. So, yeah, okay, but also Strike Zone's, like, the strongest combat talent in the game. So I guess Pulse Generators aren't the strongest combat talent in the game. I don't really want to sleep in these too badly. Again, like, Warmachine is heavily carried by Clawmaster and Redline. Pulse Gen is totally reasonable, and I think grabbing the top row and getting, like, a lot of Pulse Gen usage, I think actually fairly reasonable, and you will find yourself rewarded by this decently well. The nice thing is, although Sentry doesn't come with a combat Pulse Generator, the 2 you can get through the Underworld Hub and through a storyline mission, both of which come with offensively useful Pulse Generators. One is minus evasion, the other is armor shred. And so without having to go for more implants on those 2, you're ready to go, and I think you'd be happy to drop the cooldown by 3 turns and make it cost 0 AP and start your killing sprees a little bit nicer. Again, it's going to print you 1 AP like once or twice a mission, but it's 1 AP when it matters, which is in combat. Now, at the bottom row is your Pulse Generators deal 10, 20, 30% more damage. These are absolutely not worth it. The list of cyberware in the game right now, there really isn't a single Pulse Generator I would say, like, oh yeah, that's a damage generator. They're all support utility. I don't even like these nodes are here because they're trap. They're a trap. They're kind of bait. I think they also kind of lie to players about what you're going to use a Pulse Generator for. They're not really very good for damage at all. Keep in mind, you're probably using these early on to debuff your enemies. The damage is kind of nice, but it's cosmetic. Realistically, it's like, you lost 70 health. That's nice. What I wanted was minus 40 evasion. And I got that, and that was worth it. But, like, I don't care that instead of doing 40 damage, I did 44 damage. It doesn't matter. It's truly irrelevant. There are some very, very late game Pulse Generators that do have up to, like, 100 health cost to you. That's really, really late on. That said, if you've got a level 25 Warmachine and you've got talent points to spend, grabbing the bottom row to drop the health cost by minus 100 total, okay, I buy it, but I would not rush for that one really at all. Let's go to the next stuff down the line. We've got Silent Stalker. Now, the cool thing is you don't have to even go through Pulse Generators, right? It comes right out of Redline here, and it's 1 point, and it's boost speed, which is great. You get Silent Stalker here. So Silent Stalker is very much like the Vanguard's Silence talent. You press it, you don't make any sound while moving. You gain Kinetic as pure, but it's canceled by a single attack, so your first bonk out of this is going to be fair, like 20-25% more damage. Now, I haven't tested this specifically, but based on wording, it's going to work this way. Again, I could be wrong. You can test it once yourself and you'll know. Most Pulse Generators, or at least a large portion of them, deal kinetic damage, but they also don't count as attacks. They specifically will not alert guards. They will not turn around, and even though there's a sound effect that plays when you use a Pulse Generator, guards do not turn towards the sound of the Pulse Generator. I believe, though I could be wrong, that Silent Stalker carries that damage forward into your Pulse Generators, and then maybe this starts to matter a little bit, and then you can still make your melee attack or claw attack or whatever and get your bonus damage out of that one. I'm not 100% sure that's true, but I'm based on reading the tooltip, I think that's true. You can also get another 5% Kinetic Spear and 10 stealth crit damage. You can get another 10% Kinetic Spear and 10 more stealth crit damage, and then you can get +1 move point for the turn as well, although 1 move point on a, rather long cooldown, I would not really bother here. Yeah, it costs 0. It's an MP printer, but But yeah, you can get yourself a solid, 25% Kinetic Spear and a solid 20% stealth crit damage. Now, the difficulty here is I find it is relatively difficult to get a lot of crit chance on your Warmachine. If I recall correctly, there is a crit chance printing. There are actually two. There are two crit chance printing pulse generators in the game. There's one for 40 and one for 50. One is at the end of the battle tank V-chip / power play storyline. It's the very highest level. The other one is a V-chip only service, but it's level 1 there, and so you can get some heavy crit vuln pulse generators, but they're functionally very late game because you have to mint a V-chip or start a power play and then max it out afterwards. But yeah, there's I think some very real gains to be had eventually, but really early on, unless you're specifically playing with a Marcosite soldier and a JTAC Strike Zone sniper who's gonna debuff the crap out of crit chance for you, it's gonna be really hard for you to actually use stealth crit damage well. To me, it just doesn't really fit how Warmachine works because it's so hard for them to print crit chance in true fashion. And so getting some bonus damage for a single strike on a relatively long cooldown, to me, none of this is really worth it. And again, because you don't have a lot of crit chance in the first place, getting your stealth attacks here and getting this more often, just to me also isn't really worth it. Again, there's maybe the cheeky buff into Pulse Gen Master, sort of hit him with a heavy kinetic thing, but I don't really see it. That said, again, there's a lot of other good things to grab, so I wouldn't be too worried about it overall. All right, next to talk about is going to be Directed Pulse over here. So when you use a pulse generator, recover a melee weapon Ion Bat, gain 10 evasion for the rest of this turn, and you can make it better by getting some kinetic damage as well for the rest of this turn, as well as some some more evasion on you, and then you can get even more kinetic damage and a move point for funsies as well, and you can drop this to be a 2-turn cooldown, aka it is clearly always on anytime you'd ever use a pulse generator. Now, one thing to point out is that the Cyberknight talent Rewind does not recharge things like baseline using a pulse gen, baseline swinging a claw, or baseline shooting your eye lasers. Any talent like Silent Stalker or Pain Editor or Directed Pulse or Nova Beam, those will all count for Rewind, which really means Directed Pulse, you're just not going to have any big problems after you go here. I mean, maybe without learning anything at all. You're going to have a hard time not having this back up every single time you use a Pulse Generator, but okay, whatever. I had someone report a bug on the Discord where they said they weren't getting the battery back. I assume they'll fix it at some point, but I think as of today, you don't get battery back at least sometimes. But look, the way that you really play this character is you open up with a pulse generator and to say, yeah, so when I do that, I'm going to have 10, maybe 20% kinetic damage for the rest of the turn to make sure my basic attacks, my claw attacks do well, then I can trigger red line and keep going. That's all fairly reasonable. And if you have, I think taking the baseline point here, I mean, well, if all you're getting is 1 battery ammo and 10 evasion, I think actually it's not even all that good because realistically, my experience has been that I don't run out of melee battery. That my preferred melee weapon of choice is a E-Cutter, that family of armor cutter blades, and those have a lot of battery innately, and it's very hard for me to actually run out when playing the character. Maybe I'm being too precious and I'm wrong in that assessment, but I had not found that I need extra recharges here. That said, if you are multiclassing, say, into Cyber Sword, and you're getting a bunch of extra points into improved Power Slice to have more charges and a faster recharge of Power Slices, this starts to matter a whole lot more, where you're getting a lot of battery back, and then I think that's actually very logical and a very reasonable choice to pick up here. But at a baseline, the talent by itself just doesn't do anything I really care about. That said, eventually investing and saying, look, every Pulse Gen, once I'm doing it constantly, and I'm doing it maybe every 3 or 4 turns thanks to Berserk Haze. Let's call it every 4 turns realistically. Every 4 turns, do I want 20 kinetic damage and a move point? For a total of 6 points getting everything here? I don't know if I really want to. And plus, keep in mind, it requires a lot of travel nodes, right? Even if I am in Pulse Gen, I have to go 2 travel to get here. Or if I'm in Pain Editor, it's 2 travel to get there. So keep in mind, to learn Directed Pulse, baseline requires 3, and this is not good enough for 3. Maxing it out costs another 5. For 8, I would not grab 1 move point every, realistically 3 to 4 turns, and 20% kinetic damage. To me, this doesn't make the cut, and I think I would rather multiclass and invest in Cyber Sword talents than go all the way down here. Final talent is Pain Editor. The nice thing is, again, it's right here next to Redline, and then up, and here you go into Pain Editor. Move speed, honestly, not a bad attribute node to grab on the first place. When you take damage, cut it by half, and gain initiative. if it happened to be that this was like a new turn refresh, you're going to jump ahead of the enemy, you can immediately jump in and try to kill somebody, maybe even just jump into Overwatch or something, right? Like deal some damage and put the Overwatch cone up, and now you can interrupt them next down the line. You can make the damage reduction even better, get more initiative. I would absolutely never grab the extra +4 down here for 2 points. That sounds pretty terrible. But, you know, if you find yourself actually taking damage, and it's honestly not far away because you're right here by red line, it is a solid enough defensive talent where it pops when you need it, dropping the damage by a large amount here. Keep in mind you are playing a little bit on the razor's edge by burning your own health typically with things like Burn Surge once it actually does that, and Pulse Generators and Eye Lasers once it does that as well. And so there's some actual value in doing so. If you're going to play full offense, obviously you can kind of skip, but like it's really like not far away, and you know, honestly can be reasonable if the game is proving, you know, moderately difficult overall. Let's talk very briefly then about multi-class opportunities. Yeah, okay, sure, it's an inactive recruit. I'm going to switch over to the other character then, and we'll talk about multi-class opportunities. So the biggest one is Cybersword, easily, by far. I think it's, you know, the most obvious one. Getting some extra damage via Power Slice, getting an extra charge, getting the lower cooldown down by 1. I find this class tends to play with a marriage of claw damage and sword damage. You print so many action points, it is not possible to, like, have enough claw charges to do everything you're always going to do. And so to me, it's like you're already getting bonus kinetic damage, you're already getting a bunch of reasons to be in melee range, like just go use a sword, go use Power Slice. And so going in here and taking improved Power Slice, pretty nice. Once you're already there, guess what? Choppa, really close by, when you're getting kinetic damage and an extra charge. And the big thing is, you know, you're getting bonus action points, right? When you kill a target, are you ready? It's more kinetic damage. It's more action points. It's more running people down and killing everybody at all. It's good. Slash Slide, because you don't actually have great AoE otherwise in Cybersword. You have like your Pulse Generator, and then you set it for that. And then Slash Slide, all the guards you just shredded or lowered their evasion or gave crit vulnerability to. All that stuff can kind of work. Yeah, all pretty wonderful stuff here. And then, of course, you can keep going further on down the line and grab the other Cybersword stuff. I have a Cybersword guide out there already. But for everybody else, it's like, realistically, if you're some kind of soldier or sniper or any kind of gun character, well, you literally can't with Gunslinger because it's mutually exclusive, but the realistic range of the various eye lasers here is just too short to matter. This is the longest range eye laser in the game, and it's 18 meters. Now, that is the range of an urban assault rifle, or it's actually longer than your typical E-rifle. But if you're running a sniper rifle, an AR, even like a base, like well-built revolver or pistol, these are shorter range than the options you already have in weaponry. And unless you run very specifically, I think I have one on her, yeah, the Bright Shot Optics. These specifically come with a bunch of base stats. You get range accuracy and crit chance and crit damage. Those numbers are slightly lower than those out of a getting just a display link straight up. And the range on the talent is 12 meters. And so it's like, there's not a weapon reuser in the game that, unless you're a shotgun user, and if you are, why? Yeah, I don't see the value in it. And it's like, if you are a shotgun user because you're a Scourge, I would take your spine implant somewhere else. I would grab your Ocular slot for a display link. I would use your incredibly strong shotgun stuns and your other tools and not bother spending all the money and downtime to become a Warmachine. Now, that said, again, the cross-class movements between being a Cybersword and Warmachine is awesome. It's really good. It's great. I think it's very, very strong. Splash Gun utility, because you're already here, I think is fine. It's not like your average Cybersword needs a display link. I mean, the crit chance is nice, but like, it's fine. You can even just go for the Bright Shot Optic and get like pretty good crit chance and crit damage, and then still go here and like literally not care about the range differences there. That's honestly fine. That's probably the recommended build for those characters, to be honest, is to do that eventually down the line. You might not go into the claw stuff, but it's like, oh, you can grab a little bit of utility here. You can grab Berserk Haze. Well, no, you probably wouldn't, but you might like move in off the side and go towards Burn Surge. That's probably a little janky, but you could. I don't know if it's actually better, but I mean, or you just like, you go and you fully embrace sword plus claw, and that's also very good. I know it's like not the strongest talk overall about multiclassing. Basically, Warmachine is a melee class. It does not jive well with the range classes. I think it's not worth like dipping a small amount into Warmachine. So being like the combat spec for a hacker or something, to me, not worth it. You're better off going soldier or sniper as your dip. Even Cybersword is better as a dip overall. Warmachine is a invest deeply kind of class. That is how I feel. You want to max out Clawmaster, you want to max out Redline, you want to max out Burn Surge. You can skip the bottom row here for a little bit. But yeah, you really want those. And that's going to be 10 levels of investment in the class at the very, very beginning. I mean, heck, I'm level 15 here, and I barely got anything bonus in Pulse Gen. And, like, this is what I have points for, right? It's like, you kind of got to be, like, close to level 15 for this character to, like, really make sense and really sing. I guess from, you know, close to, like, 13, I think, in realistic terms. But, yeah, when you're there, it's great. And even before that, like, even without Burn Surge, this class is still very, very good. But I think, like, around level 7 to get, like, good investment in Redline and Clawmaster, you kind of be about that far before you start feeling really, really, really good. That's my recommendation there. Let's finally talk about the 3 war machines available in the game. So Molly here, rest in peace, comes from the very opening of the game. You can grab her as one of your starting mercenaries. Overall set here, pretty reasonable. Its reaction and strength to me are really good attributes for a melee combatant. Comes with some baseline crit chance, which is nice because all claws have either crit damage or stealth crit damage. Basically, if you have a pure damage claw, it is only stealth crit damage, and if you have a kinetic damage claw, it is non-stealth crit damage, which is much more usable in the average case. Overall stuff here is fine. I mean, strength is good, melee accuracy is good. Fractional AP is going to be very, very hard to get through without armor crafting, so you're going to mostly not care about this node. Also, she does not come with a pulse generator, as I mentioned, so you're only going to be on, like, baby level claw, baby level eyes for a while. That's going to be fine. I found it to be reasonably effective, but as my one melee character, I ran a hard mission. She died, is what it is. That said, I was also under leveled because I had half XP in this playthrough. Anyway, next one comes to the Warmachine. Warmachine comes through the Underworld Hub. I think this one is very strong as well. You have the choice of your third one here. You get Agile, which is move point and move speed. You can get Fearsome for Will, and Kinetic is extra pure. And you can get Cold Killer, which is Will and crit chance. So there again are ways to print extra crit chance here on the character. Ultimately, taking extra stress when undergoing surgery kind of sucks, but the nice thing is she comes with really good gear out of the box. So Ripper Blades are actually a very exclusive Cyber Claw that'll be very hard to replace for a long time. You'll need to go really deeply in a different into limit breaks before these are going to be out like paced. And honestly, like, this character retired functionally on these claws out of the box, and they were great. And again, she was my highest kill character in this playthrough. She was, you know, pretty wonderful overall. Baseline kind of crappy eye laser doesn't really matter. I would replace this for a crit chance one when you get the chance to, but that will take time to actually unlock. But it's fine, whatever. But the pulse generator here, pretty solid. Minus 40 evasion comes out of it. Yep. Honestly, pretty solid. One thing I do want to call out, actually, when playing a War Machine is that switching from doing basic melee attacks to doing claw attacks, that no longer counts the focused fire buff, and so you're going to have a bunch of recoil. Like, normally when playing a melee character, recoil is ignorable because you, like, walk forward for 2 AP, that's negligible, who cares, and then you strike again, and because of focused fire, there's no recoil. War Machines are the only class in the game where recoil is a real consideration for melee usage, because you're going to swing this thing, generate 10 recoil for, let's say, 3 or 4 strikes, so you're printing 1,000,000 action points, and then you go for your claw attack, and you're like, wait, I have like a minus 34 chance to hit. That's like really meaningful, and I'm suddenly like, I can't crit if I glance. Well, they can't shred anyway, but they couldn't shred if they glanced, and that's something kind of matters a whole lot. So getting an evasion debuff to make that a little bit less bad, kind of nice. Also worth noting that claws have baseline like 65 accuracy. Pure damage claws can go up a bit higher. They go like 70 to 75, and you totally can go for those, and they're fine. But if you're going for the kinetic and kinetic conversion sort of build, like, these are all only 65 accuracy, and so finding ways to buoy that accuracy up to get more damage, pretty valuable, especially if you are stacking crit in any way, via talents or teammates or whatever. You're going to need that, otherwise you can't crit if you glance. Nothing else to really bring up here. That's that character. I think she's pretty solid, and again, kind of you can make whatever choice you want around what you're going to grab as the secondary here. Double move speed here from this and reaction is pretty solid, but getting damage out of Fearsome or Cold Killer can also be reasonable. And then Jair here came out of a power play storyline. It's the battle tank doctor power play. At the very end, you can rescue this war machine here. She comes with some pretty cool stuff. Cyber accuracy, kind of nice. Again, it really only matters for claws because you don't care about eye laser damage, but 10 accuracy on claws is good. It can help you graduate out of glancing hits, which is a pretty solid thing. Again, really good attribute spread here. Cyber Adept is great because it reduces cyber surgery stress and recovery time meaningfully. That is a really, really big deal. This means you can get in more cybernetics quickly. I'm not sure if this one is randomly rolled or not. It happened to give me strength and close quarters accuracy, which is pretty solid. But otherwise, yeah, I'm not sure what the best option there would have been, or if there are even other options overall. I just truly don't know. Usually, characters like this tend to have a randomly rolled trait, so I don't know what the other options are, but this one is acceptable. Comes with baseline level 1 Delta Wire, comes with slightly upgraded hand blades. These are not as good as the Underworld Hub War Machine. You can see this is 65 accuracy and 150 kinetic. This is 65 accuracy and 172 kinetic, so a measurable increase in damage here. You can further upgrade hand blades and whatnot by upgrading your doctors. I'm going to scroll up on my doc of all of the things in the game. Yeah, you can get hand blades level 4 from the battle tank servers themselves, and you can get pure damage 1s from battle tank if you wanted to go that way instead of going kinetic heavy. To be fair, this character doesn't have a lot of kinetic printing, and so you can make that a very real option for you. Overall, last thing I'm going to say then is what to do about gear, and then finally cyberware. So to me, if you are a sort of kinetic based, and again, I think every Warmachine should be claw based. I think if you're playing it to not invest in the claw tree, you're just a weak character, weaker than you could have been, and that's just like literally not the way they designed the character to be, right? The character was designed to be a claw focused melee heavy combatant with like some utility on the other stuff going on. And so to me, like, middle tree is a very, very big deal. And so if you have things like this, where you have like, you know, bonus kinetic damage and, you know, pretty solid amounts of strength, which is kind of nice. And you can get traits here for more kinetic as pure damage and things like that. You can get some really good stuff going on and invest heavily in kinetic claws. And because they're dealing kinetic damage, you might want an armor cutter as your melee weapon. And so for me, the actual single highest shred chance armor cutter in the game is specifically the Vorpal Edge. I got lucky and dropped it in this campaign, but it is the single highest base shred E cutter in the game. There are ones that don't have Power Slice armor cutter who have this much shred. Clubs have basically none, but the other blade types can have decent shred. But if you're trying to shred somebody so that your claws can kill, you really, really want an E-cutter. You ideally want something with armor shred in the grip here, and then you can reach 100% shred. The RNG shred and the armor cutter active will stack in a single attack, so you can shred 2 armor in a single power slice. I think there are like 2 armor cutters in the game where actually their armor cutter is 2. The active will shred 2 armor off the target. That's just going to be better outright here. But again, I have found that like this character will tend to bounce back and forth between using claws and swords themselves, and so you want to invest pretty heavily in a good sword, ideally one with a good shred chance, because, well, they're both dealing kinetic damage, and you want to shred your enemies to make them die pretty quickly. For a secondary, I've tended to really like going for, honestly, short range full auto guns. So frequently, I'm playing at ranges of around 18 meters when I can't get kills anymore. And like snipers have too much min range to be useful in general. I think using a small arm secondary like a pistol or an SMG or revolver is not needed because I'm already holding a secondary like this, but I'll use a big gun. And E-rifles, to me, just kind of blend everything I need really well together. 1, there's armor shred. Well, that's great. I'm kinetic focused. I'm going to want to shred your armor with 40% chance per hit and 3 hits per enemy. That's actually pretty good. I would like that overall. I'm not attacking with the weapon all that often, and so the small magazine size and the like limited number of reloads actually not that painful for me because it just doesn't matter. The optimal range of 10, like at the minimum, not a very big deal because guess what? If you're within 10 meters, I'm probably attacking you normally anyway. And so the range disparity kind of line up really well, and I found the E-rifles felt really good here. And because I don't have things like savagery and everything else where I can turn ballistic damage into pure damage, I just want a bunch of pure damage out of the box with my weapon itself. And so to me, E-rifles really made sense here. I think urban assaults can be fine as well as kind of a, you know, littler version of the same kind of weapon. But yeah, I think overall pretty solid there. As for actual implants, well, generally speaking, I do actually recommend you grab the normal 4, so get a combat link. When you get higher level combat links, they can give you things. Sorry, this is the wrong one. I meant the Delta Wire here. There we go. When you get up to the Delta Wire 3, it actually comes with a flat +1 move point. That's honestly pretty wonderful. That's a pretty big upgrade, all things considered. You do have to get a V-chip only contact, Gamma Clinic up to level 3 to grab this, but it's nice when you get there. +1 flat move point every single turn is pretty wonderful overall. Also mitigates some move speed penalties. You can wear medium to heavy armors and feel kind of okay about them. Also comes with flat initiative, which is kind of wonderful as well. So, you know, not a lot of complaints there about the Delta Wire, but it does seem to me that upgrades are worth it. I would generally at some point switch out your optic for one that comes with baseline crit. So the Bright Shot optic here would be the ideal because you can use the crit chance and crit damage as just useful stats for your character long term. Again, put in the best blades you can. If you are kinetic heavy, then I would recommend going for Ripper blades or hand blades. But if you don't want to be doing that and you don't want to invest as heavily into kinetic conversions and having high strength and whatnot, there are pure damage claws you can get as well from very similar services. Just read the description, you'll see them. It's not going to be a big problem. yes, I think you should get a pulse generator. I think they are worth it. You're already in Warmachine. Go spend the slot. Especially in this case, the opportunity cost of your chest slot is incredibly, incredibly low. There aren't really any all-star chest implants in the game, and so to me, just grabbing a pulse generator is fine. In fact, if I'm playing a cyber sword, I would be willing to grab a pulse generator without going into Warmachine and just like having a pulse generator. I think they make the cut for melee combatants, whether you're Warmachine or not. And then the final options here, this one I think is no longer useful for my character, but I had grabbed this so I could wear heavier armor. An ADVX filter goes in lung slot, lets you wear heavy armor and feel good about it. The stats there are okay. There is basically a Warmachine, not like required, but you wouldn't get it any other way. There's crit chance, evasion, and cyber weapon damage in a brain slot here. This is the same slot that a hacker uses. You still have the ability to run Synaptic Accelerator for extra initiative and things like that. And in fact, realistically, if I was to rebuild this character again, I would not run this filter here, and I would probably keep the combat link, and I would either run a Synaptic Accelerator, or I would run Cyber Legs to get a bunch of extra move speed. I think that's going to be the rundown on the characters. That's going to be my rundown on Warmachine. I think it's a very fun class. I think it's a very, very good class. I once again want to reiterate that you should really invest heavily in Clawmaster and Redline, and then you splash out for utility as needed. You might want to multiclass in a Cyber Sword and get some decent stuff here in Slash Slide, maybe Aegis, maybe Power Slice, definitely Choppa. And it's going to be a fun character to play overall. So, hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.